I'm Rebecca, 35 years old, and until recently, I thought I had the perfect marriage with my husband James. We were approaching our 10th anniversary, and I had been dropping hints about a diamond bracelet I wanted. James had been acting strange lately, but I brushed it off as work stress. That night at Lucille, our favorite restaurant, I was expecting a romantic evening. Instead, I got the shock of my life when another woman showed up wearing my gift. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to see how I handled what happened next when another woman showed up wearing my anniversary gift. I've always been the type of woman who believes in working hard for what you want. After graduating with my master's degree in marketing, I built my career carefully, step by step, until I became the marketing director at a respected firm in Boston. My colleagues often called me meticulous and determined. Those same qualities extended to my personal life, which is why I thought I had done everything right when it came to my marriage. James and I met 11 years ago at a charity gala. He stood out immediately, not just because of his tall frame and confident smile, but because of how he commanded the room. As the CEO of a successful tech company, James was charismatic, ambitious, and incredibly charming. When he approached me that night and started a conversation about the modern art displayed at the venue, I was immediately drawn to his intelligence and wit. Our connection was instant, and by the end of the evening, I had his number in my phone. Our courtship was like something from a romance novel. James sent flowers to my office, planned elaborate dates, and always made me feel like I was the most important person in his world. 6 months after we met, he proposed during a weekend trip to Napa Valley. The ring was stunning, a princess-cut diamond that caught the light perfectly. I said yes without hesitation, believing I had found my forever partner. The early years of our marriage were blissful. We bought a beautiful brownstone in Back Bay, traveled to exotic locations, and built what I thought was an unshakable foundation. We complemented each other perfectly. James was spontaneous and outgoing, while I was more practical and detail-oriented. Together, we seemed unstoppable. We talked about having children eventually, but for the first few years, we wanted to focus on our careers and enjoying each other. It was around our 7th anniversary when I first noticed subtle changes. James started working later hours, often coming home after I was already asleep. His phone would ring at odd hours, and he would take the calls in another room, speaking in hushed tones. When I asked about these calls, he would brush them off as work emergencies or international clients in different time zones. I wanted to believe him, so I did. The frequency of our date nights decreased. The thoughtful little gifts and surprise weekends away became rare occurrences. James was still affectionate and present when we were together, but those moments grew fewer and farther between. I told myself it was just a phase, that all marriages go through periods of distance before coming back stronger. As our 10th anniversary approached, I hoped it would be an opportunity to reconnect. I started dropping hints about a beautiful diamond tennis bracelet I had seen at Tiffany's. Not in an entitled way, but as something special to mark a decade of marriage. One evening, I overheard James on the phone discussing a diamond bracelet, and my heart swelled with hope. Maybe he had been distant because he was planning something special for our anniversary. I threw myself into preparations for our anniversary. I booked a table at Lucille, the upscale French restaurant where James had proposed to me years ago. I bought a new dress, a deep blue silk number that James once said brought out the color of my eyes. I scheduled appointments for hair, nails, and makeup, wanting everything to be perfect for what I hoped would be a night of rekindling our romance. The week before our anniversary, I found myself daydreaming about the evening, imagining James sliding that velvet box across the table, seeing the sparkle of diamonds that would symbolize our enduring love. I pictured us laughing over champagne, reminiscing about our years together, and perhaps even making plans for the next decade. The diamond bracelet wasn't just about the jewelry itself, but what it represented, that I was still special to him, still worth the grand gestures. On the evening of our anniversary, I spent hours getting ready, paying attention to every detail. The reflection that greeted me in the mirror gave me confidence. My chestnut hair fell in soft waves around my shoulders, my makeup was flawless but natural, and the blue dress hugged my curves in all the right places. I spritzed on the perfume James had given me for Christmas, a subtle floral scent that he always complimented. When James arrived home to pick me up, he seemed distracted but managed to smile when he saw me. "You look beautiful," he said, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek. I noticed he was wearing the silver cufflinks I had given him for his birthday, which I took as a good sign. We took his Mercedes to the restaurant, making small talk about our days. I could sense a nervous energy about him that I attributed to anniversary jitters. Lucille welcomed us with soft lighting, the gentle notes of a piano playing in the background, and the subtle scent of fresh flowers. The maitre d' led us to a secluded table by the window, offering a stunning view of the Boston skyline illuminated against the night sky. As we settled in, I couldn't help but feel a flutter of anticipation. The setting was perfect, romantic, and full of promise for the evening ahead. I had no idea how quickly that promise would shatter. As we sat at our beautifully set table, I couldn't help but notice how James kept glancing at his watch. The romantic ambience of Lucille surrounded us, with its crystal chandeliers casting a warm glow over the white tablecloths and polished silverware. Yet despite the perfect setting, James seemed a million miles away. "Is everything okay?" I asked, reaching across the table to touch his hand. His fingers felt cold beneath mine, and he startled slightly at my touch. "Of course," he replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just thinking about that Wilson contract. The negotiations are at a critical stage." I tried to hide my disappointment. "James, it's our anniversary. Surely the Wilson contract can wait until tomorrow." He nodded apologetically and put his phone face down on the table. "You're right. I'm sorry. Tonight is about us." The waiter arrived with menus, and we ordered our favorites. James suggested a bottle of Chateau Margaux, the same wine we had shared on our honeymoon in France. This thoughtful gesture made me relax a little. Perhaps he was just stressed from work and would soon settle into our celebration. We managed some pleasant conversation about neutral topics as we enjoyed our appetizers. I told him about my new project at work, and he shared an amusing story about his new assistant's mishap with the office coffee machine. For a brief moment, it felt like old times, and I allowed myself to hope that the evening would turn around. But then his phone buzzed. Though he tried to be discreet, I saw him check it under the table. His expression changed subtly, a mixture of anticipation and anxiety crossing his features. After that, his distraction only increased. He checked his phone no less than 5 times during our main course. Each glance was like a small cut to my heart. I was about to confront him when a waiter approached with a bottle of Dom Perignon champagne. "Compliments of a friend," the waiter announced, presenting the expensive bottle with a flourish. James's face drained of color. "Who sent this?" he asked, his voice tight. The waiter gestured toward the bar. "The lady over there, sir." I turned to look and noticed a woman watching our table with interest. She was striking, with sleek blonde hair and a red dress that accentuated her slim figure. She appeared to be in her late 20s, at least 8 years younger than me. When she caught me looking, she raised her glass in a small toast and smiled. "Do you know her?" I asked James, though something in my gut already knew the answer. "She's a colleague," he mumbled, loosening his tie slightly. "From the San Francisco office. Must be in town for meetings." I nodded slowly, watching as the woman stood up from her bar stool and began walking toward our table. Her confidence was unmistakable in her stride, in the way she held her head high, in the slight smile playing on her lips. As she approached, something on her wrist caught the light, sending prisms dancing across our white tablecloth. It was then that I saw it, a diamond tennis bracelet identical to the one I had been hinting at for months. My stomach dropped as if I were in a plummeting elevator. Time seemed to slow as she reached our table, her perfectly manicured hand resting lightly on James's shoulder. "Surprise, darling," she said to him, her voice silky and amused. Then she turned to me with a calculated smile. "You must be Rebecca. I've heard so much about you." "I'm Amanda." James shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Amanda is a marketing consultant we've been working with," he said quickly. "She's helping with the Wilson project." Amanda laughed lightly, the sound like glass breaking. "Oh, I think we've been working on much more than just the Wilson project, haven't we, James?" As she gestured with her hand, the bracelet slid down her slim wrist. It was exactly what I had wanted, the one I had shown James in the Tiffany catalog, the one I had hoped would be my anniversary gift. The diamonds caught the light, winking at me mockingly. "That's a beautiful bracelet," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. Amanda touched it with her other hand, as if showing it off. "Isn't it? James has exquisite taste. He gave it to me last week. Said it was for being such a valuable asset to the company." James's face was now ashen. "Amanda, I don't think. Won't you join us?" I interrupted, pulling out the empty chair beside our table. Both James and Amanda looked surprised at my invitation. "Since you're already part of our anniversary celebration, you might as well sit down." Amanda hesitated for a moment, then sat down with a triumphant smirk. She was clearly expecting a scene, tears, perhaps a dramatic exit on my part. Instead, I was offering her a front-row seat to whatever was about to unfold. I could see confusion in her eyes, but also curiosity. "Anniversary? How many years?" she asked, feigning interest while she signaled the waiter for a glass. 10, I replied calmly. "A whole decade of marriage." "Impressive," Amanda said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. "In today's world, that's practically a lifetime." The waiter poured champagne for Amanda. James sat frozen between us, his eyes darting between his wife and his mistress, clearly trying to figure out what was happening and how to regain control of the situation. To 10 years, Amanda raised her glass in a mock toast. "And to new beginnings." As our glasses clinked, I locked eyes with her and saw something I hadn't expected, insecurity beneath the confidence. This woman, despite her youth and beauty, wasn't as sure of herself or her position as she wanted to appear. In that moment, I realized that while she might be wearing my bracelet, she was playing a game with rules she didn't fully understand. I took a sip of the champagne, which tasted bitter despite its quality. The evening had taken a surreal turn, and I found myself in a bizarre triangle, sitting across from the two people who had betrayed me, maintaining a facade of composure while inside I was screaming. The diamond bracelet on Amanda's wrist caught the light with every movement she made, each sparkle a reminder of my husband's betrayal. The tension at our table was thick enough to cut with the expensive steak knives that sat unused beside our plates. James cleared his throat several times, clearly struggling to find words that could possibly explain away the situation. "Rebecca, this isn't what it looks like," he finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. I raised an eyebrow. "Really? What exactly does it look like, James?" Amanda leaned forward, her perfume heavy and cloying as it mingled with the scents of our half-eaten dinner. "I think it looks like the truth finally coming out," she said with false sympathy. "These things happen in long marriages. People grow apart, find new connections." I took another sip of champagne, using the moment to steady myself. "How long has this connection been going on?" James opened his mouth to speak, but Amanda answered first. "About 8 months, isn't it, James? Since that conference in Chicago." The timeline hit me like a physical blow. 8 months. While I had been planning our anniversary, decorating our home for Christmas, nursing him through a February flu, and planning his birthday party in April, he had been with her. "The Chicago conference," I repeated thoughtfully. "When you said your flight was delayed due to bad weather and you had to stay an extra night." James winced. Rebecca, please, can we discuss this privately? But Amanda is practically family now, isn't she? I said, surprising myself with the edge in my voice. After all, she's wearing what should have been my anniversary gift. Amanda twisted the bracelet on her wrist, a flash of discomfort crossing her features before she masked it with another confident smile. James has given me several gifts. He's very generous. The comment triggered a cascade of memories. James's explanations for mysterious credit card charges, weekend business trips that seemed to multiply, the declining balance in our joint savings account that he attributed to market investments. All the puzzle pieces were finally fitting together, forming a picture of betrayal that spanned far longer than I had imagined. I'm sure he is, I replied. With my money too, it seems. James's face flushed red. That's not fair. I've worked hard for everything we have. I repeated. Interesting choice of pronoun given the circumstances. The waiter approached our table, sensing the tension but professionally pretending not to notice. Is everything to your satisfaction? Before James could answer, I smiled at the waiter. Everything is illuminating. Could I trouble you for another glass of wine? I think I'm going to need it. As the waiter left, Amanda shifted in her seat, clearly enjoying the drama she had created. You know, Rebecca, James often mentioned how you were always so busy with your career. A man needs attention. The calculated cruelty of her comment made my chest tighten. I thought about all the nights I had waited up for James, only to have him arrive home smelling of unfamiliar perfume, claiming he had been in meetings. All the weekends I had suggested trips or activities, only to be told he needed to catch up on work. Is that what he told you? I asked. That I neglected him? James interjected quickly. I never said that. Amanda, you're making things worse. Am I? She challenged. Or am I just being honest? Something you should try sometime, James. The look that passed between them revealed something unexpected. Tension. They weren't a united front against me. There were cracks in their relationship too. I filed this observation away, knowing it might be useful. Excuse me, I said, standing up. I need a moment. I walked to the restroom on surprisingly steady legs, nodding politely at other diners who had no idea my world was imploding. Once inside the elegant bathroom, I locked myself in a stall and finally allowed the tears to come. I pressed my hand against my mouth to muffle the sobs that tore through my body. 10 years of marriage. Countless memories. The life we had built together. All of it tainted now by his betrayal. I thought about the bracelet on Amanda's wrist, symbols of our decade together gifted to a woman who had been in his life for less than a year. The humiliation burned through me. After a few minutes, I splashed cold water on my face and looked at my reflection in the mirror. My carefully applied makeup was smudged, my eyes red-rimmed from crying. But beneath the pain, I saw something else. Determination. I had survived challenges before. I would survive this too. As I reapplied my lipstick, a memory surfaced. 3 months ago, when my suspicions about James had reached a breaking point, I had hired a private investigator. It was something I had never imagined doing, but the constant lies and late nights had pushed me to my limit. The investigator had provided regular updates, building a file of evidence that I had been reluctant to look at, still hoping there would be an innocent explanation. The most recent report had arrived yesterday, a thick envelope that I had tucked into my purse, unable to bring myself to open it. That envelope was still there, along with a USB drive containing what the investigator had described as conclusive evidence. I had brought it tonight as a form of courage, a reminder that I wasn't crazy for having doubts. I never expected I would actually need it. But now, fate had forced my hand in the most dramatic way possible. I also remembered the prenuptial agreement we had signed before our wedding. At the time, it had seemed like a sensible precaution given our respective assets. One clause in particular stood out in my memory. In the event of infidelity, the faithful spouse would be entitled to a significantly larger portion of our shared assets. As I stared at my reflection, a plan began to form. James had underestimated me. He thought I was oblivious, or perhaps too devoted to make waves. He was about to learn how wrong he was. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and walked back to the table with renewed purpose. Amanda was laughing at something, her hand casually resting on James's arm. They both looked up as I approached, Amanda with smug satisfaction, James with growing panic. "I thought you might have left," Amanda said. "And missed the rest of this lovely evening?" I replied, sitting down. "I wouldn't dream of it." I picked up my fork and took a bite of my now cold meal, savoring the moment of confusion my calm demeanor was creating. The bracelet continued to glitter on Amanda's wrist, but it no longer had the power to hurt me. I had something far more valuable, the truth and the means to use it. When I returned to the table, both James and Amanda seemed taken aback by my composed demeanor. They had clearly expected tears, perhaps a public scene, or for me to storm out of the restaurant. Instead, I sat down, straightened my napkin in my lap, and took a sip of water as if we were simply continuing a pleasant dinner conversation. "So," I said, looking directly at Amanda, "tell me more about how you and James met at the Chicago conference." "I'd love to hear the real story." James shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Rebecca, this isn't appropriate conversation for..." "For what, James? Our anniversary dinner?" "I think that ship sailed when your mistress decided to join us." My voice remained steady, betraying none of the turmoil I felt inside. Amanda, seemingly enjoying her perceived power in the situation, leaned forward. "We met at the closing reception. James was giving a keynote speech about innovation and risk-taking." She laughed lightly. "Ironic, considering the risks he's been taking since then." "Amanda," James warned, but she ignored him. "He approached me at the bar afterward. Said he noticed me in the audience. One drink led to another and well." She trailed off with a suggestive smile, twisting the diamond bracelet on her wrist. "The rest is history." I nodded, absorbing this information. 8 months ago. Interesting. That would have been right around the time you told me you needed to increase your business travel budget for expanding into new markets. James's face paled slightly. He reached for his water glass with a trembling hand. "Rebecca, I can explain everything if you'll just..." The waiter chose that moment to approach our table, wheeling a small cart with a covered silver dome. "Your anniversary dessert, as requested," he announced with a flourish, unaware of the drama unfolding at our table. With theatrical timing, he lifted the dome to reveal an elegant cake decorated with "Happy 10th Anniversary" in chocolate script. A single candle flickered in the center. The sight of it, this symbol of a milestone that now felt like a mockery, nearly broke my composure. "How lovely," Amanda commented dryly. 10 years is such an achievement. Though quality matters more than quantity, doesn't it, James? James looked like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him. "This isn't necessary, Amanda." "Oh, but I think it is," she countered, her earlier confidence giving way to something harder, more vindictive. "Rebecca deserves to know what kind of man she's been married to. The kind who promises things he never intends to deliver." An interesting crack had appeared in their united front. I sensed tension between them that went beyond the awkwardness of the situation. I decided to probe it further. "Promises?" I asked innocently. "What kind of promises has James been making to you, Amanda?" Her eyes flashed with something, anger, hurt, or perhaps both. "That he was unhappy. That his marriage was essentially over. That after your anniversary, he would ask for a divorce." James nearly choked on his water. "I never said." "You did," she snapped. "Multiple times. Just let me get through this anniversary dinner, you said. It's just for appearances." "Well, here we are, James." "How's it going so far?" The revelation that James had been planning to divorce me after our anniversary dinner, the very meal we were currently having, should have devastated me. Strangely, it only reinforced my resolve. While they bickered, I quietly reached into my purse and felt for the USB drive the investigator had given me. "You know," I said, interrupting their heated exchange. It's funny how life gives you exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. They both turned to look at me, momentarily united in their confusion. What are you talking about? James asked. I placed the USB drive on the table, next to the anniversary cake that neither of us would eat. 3 months ago, I hired a private investigator. The color drained from James's face. Amanda's eyes widened, her hand instinctively moving to cover the bracelet, as if hiding it now could somehow undo her earlier flaunting of it. You did what? James whispered. I hired someone to follow you, I repeated calmly. At first, I told myself it was just to prove my suspicions wrong, to confirm that I was being paranoid. But deep down, I knew. Amanda's confident facade cracked further. You're bluffing. Am I? I picked up the USB drive and turned it between my fingers. This contains photos, videos, hotel receipts, text message transcripts. Quite thorough, really. My investigator is very good at his job. James reached for the drive. Give me that. I pulled it back. I don't think so. And before you get any ideas about grabbing it, you should know that this is just a copy. The originals are safe with my lawyer. Your lawyer. James's voice had risen slightly, drawing curious glances from nearby tables. I smiled, feeling a surge of power that I hadn't experienced in months. Yes, my lawyer. Who, by the way, was very interested in reviewing our prenuptial agreement, particularly the infidelity clause. James went completely still. Amanda looked between us, clearly trying to piece together what was happening. What infidelity clause? She asked. Our prenup states that if either party is unfaithful, the other receives 70% of our assets, plus the house and an additional penalty of $500,000, I explained. James insisted on it, actually. He was very concerned about protecting himself from a potentially unfaithful wife. Amanda turned to James, disbelief written across her features. Is this true? James loosened his tie, looking like he might be sick. It was standard language. I never thought. That you'd be the one cheating? I finished for him. Or that I'd find out. Or perhaps that I'd have the backbone to do something about it. The restaurant manager approached our table, having noticed the escalating tension. Is everything all right here? He asked discreetly. Everything is fine, I assured him with a smile. Just having an illuminating conversation about fidelity and consequences. Could we get the check, please? As the manager walked away, I turned back to James and Amanda. You know what the interesting thing is? According to my investigator, Amanda isn't the only woman you've been seeing. Amanda's head snapped toward James. What? I nodded. There's a Jennifer in the New York office and a Stephanie in the London branch, all following the same pattern, all receiving similar gifts. I gestured to the bracelet on Amanda's wrist. That bracelet isn't as unique as you thought. It's practically a uniform. Amanda looked down at the diamond bracelet, the pride she had taken in it earlier now visibly evaporating. You told me this was one of a kind, she said to James, her voice low and dangerous. You said you designed it specially. James ran his hands through his hair, looking trapped. Amanda, this isn't the time or place. When is the time? She demanded. After you've used me like you've apparently used others? After you've moved on to the next woman in the next office. I watched their exchange with a strange sense of detachment. There was pain, certainly, but also a growing clarity. This man, whom I had loved and trusted for a decade, was not who I thought he was. And the woman who had so confidently tried to humiliate me was herself a victim of his manipulations, albeit a willing one. The prenup, James said suddenly, turning back to me. You can't prove anything without concrete evidence that would stand up in court. I tapped the USB drive. What do you think this is? Vacation photos? Your little text messages to Amanda about how you can't wait to see her again? The hotel security footage of you entering her room in San Francisco? The credit card statements showing matching jewelry purchases for 3 different women? That's just the beginning. The reality of his situation finally seemed to dawn on James. He would lose not just his marriage, but his reputation, a significant portion of his wealth, and clearly, his relationship with Amanda as well. "Rebecca," he said, his tone shifting to pleading, "we can work this out privately. There's no need to involve lawyers. Think about our history, everything we've built together." "I have been thinking about it," I replied. "For the past 3 months, it's all I've thought about. Whether our marriage could be saved. Whether you deserved another chance." Tonight answered those questions definitively. I picked up my purse and prepared to stand. The prenup has an infidelity clause and my investigator has proof. Lots of it. Your move, James. The tension at our table had shifted dramatically. Where once Amanda had been smirking at me with the upper hand, she now sat rigid with anger directed at James. My husband, meanwhile, had abandoned his attempts at explaining and moved straight to damage control. "Rebecca, please," James leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Let's discuss this privately. Whatever your investigator thinks he found, I'm sure there are explanations." I raised an eyebrow. Explanations for hotel stays with 3 different women across 3 different cities? For text messages explicitly detailing your affairs? For the identical diamond bracelets purchased on our joint credit card? I gestured toward Amanda's wrist. I'd love to hear those explanations. Amanda unclasped the bracelet and tossed it onto the table, where it landed next to the neglected anniversary cake. "I'm not part of your collection, James. You told me I was special." "You are special," James insisted, reaching for her hand, which she promptly withdrew. "Special enough to receive the same bracelet you gave to Jennifer and Stephanie?" I asked. "The same bracelet you were planning to give me tonight as an anniversary gift before Amanda showed up?" James's head snapped up. "How did you know I was going to give you a bracelet tonight?" "I didn't for certain," I admitted. "But I suspected it when I overheard you on the phone with the jeweler last month. What I didn't realize was that you were ordering multiples of the same design. Efficient shopping, I suppose." The waiter returned with our check, placing it discreetly beside James. Without looking at the total, James handed over his credit card, clearly eager to end this public humiliation as quickly as possible. "While we wait for your card," I said casually, "let me tell you exactly what my investigator found." I began reciting dates, locations, and times with clinical precision. March 15th, the Peninsula Hotel in Chicago with Amanda. April 3rd to 5th, the Four Seasons in New York with Jennifer. May 22nd, Claridge's in London with Stephanie. Shall I continue? James's face had gone from pale to ashen. "How did you know all this?" "Because I paid someone very good at their job to follow you. Because I suspected something was wrong long before I could admit it to myself. Because you got sloppy, James." I took a sip of water. The secret email account wasn't so secret. The business credit card statements came to our home address twice when you forgot to change the billing information. The lipstick on your collar, really, James? That's such a cliché. Amanda stood up abruptly. "I need some air." "Sit down," I said, my tone firm enough that she complied, looking somewhat shocked at her own obedience. "You wanted to be part of this evening. Now you get to hear all of it." The restaurant manager approached again, concern evident on his face. "Is everything all right at this table? We've had some complaints about raised voices." "Everything is illuminating," I replied with a tight smile. "We're celebrating an anniversary and some unexpected revelations." "I see," he said, clearly not seeing at all. "Would you care for another bottle of wine?" "On the house, for your special occasion." "That would be lovely," I said, while James looked like he wanted to disappear. After the manager left, I continued my methodical dismantling of James's double life. "The bracelet isn't just an anniversary gift, is it, James? It's like a trademark. A signature move. A way to keep track of your conquests." "That's not true," James protested weakly. "No? Then explain why Jennifer from New York posted a photo on Instagram last month showing off her unique gift from a special friend, a bracelet identical to Amanda's." Or why Stephanie was seen wearing the same design at a charity event in London, which coincidentally you also attended. Amanda's eyes narrowed. You said I was the only one. That we had something real. James looked trapped between us, his carefully constructed world of lies collapsing in real time. Amanda, we do have something special. Rebecca is twisting things. Save it, Amanda snapped. I should have known better. A man who cheats with you will cheat on you. She turned to me with an unexpected look of respect. How long have you known about all of this? I've had suspicions for months, I answered honestly. But concrete evidence? About 3 weeks. I was waiting to see what would happen tonight. Whether he would actually give me a bracelet identical to the ones he's been handing out to his mistresses. The manager returned with our complimentary wine and began pouring it. The rich red liquid flowed into the glasses, the normality of the action at odds with the extraordinary conversation happening at our table. Will there be anything else? He asked. Just the check when it's ready, James muttered. After the manager left, James tried one more approach. Rebecca, think about what you're doing. If you go public with these accusations, it won't just hurt me. It could damage the company, affect our employees, our friends. Don't you dare try to make me responsible for the consequences of your actions. I cut him off, my voice low but intense. You did this. Not me. You made these choices repeatedly for months. And now you're concerned about collateral damage. James slumped in his seat, finally seeming to accept that he couldn't talk his way out of this situation. What do you want? It was the question I had been waiting for. I want a divorce, James. On my terms. Which are? The prenup terms, obviously. 70% of our assets. The house. The penalty payment. And your public admission of wrongdoing, so that our friends and family know exactly why our marriage ended. James blanched. That's excessive. The financial terms alone would cripple me. Should have thought of that before establishing a harem across 3 time zones, Amanda muttered, earning a sharp look from James. You have 2 options, I continued, feeling a strange calm wash over me as I laid out my ultimatum. Either a divorce with the prenup terms enforced, or James leaned forward, desperate for an alternative. Or we attempt reconciliation, but with my conditions. You resign from your current position and take a lower-profile role with less travel. You transfer all financial assets into accounts that require dual signatures. You attend marriage counseling, individual therapy, and submit to complete transparency, phone records, email access, location tracking, the works. For a minimum of 2 years before I even consider trusting you again. The waiter returned with James's credit card and the receipt. James signed it mechanically, barely looking at the exorbitant amount. In the grand scheme of what this evening would cost him, the dinner bill was insignificant. Those aren't real options, he protested. They're the only ones you have, I replied simply. And you need to decide quickly. My lawyer is expecting my call tonight. Either to proceed with divorce filings or to draft a post-nuptial agreement with my new terms. Amanda stood up again. I think I've heard enough. This isn't my fight anymore. She looked down at the bracelet still lying on the table. Keep it. Apparently, it's not as special as I thought. As she turned to leave, I called after her. Amanda? She paused, looking back at me. Check your bracelet's serial number inside the clasp. I bet it's batch-produced, not a unique piece like he claimed. A flash of hurt crossed her face before she nodded and walked away, head held high despite the obvious humiliation. Now it was just James and me, sitting across from each other at what was supposed to be our anniversary celebration. You've been planning this, he accused quietly. I've been preparing for the possibility, I corrected him. There's a difference. Until tonight, I still had a shred of hope that I was wrong. That there might be innocent explanations. That the man I married hadn't betrayed me so thoroughly. James ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I had once found endearing but now recognized as his tell when cornered. What about our history? 10 years, Rebecca. Doesn't that count for anything? It counted for everything, I replied, feeling a wave of sadness beneath my resolve. That's why this hurts so much. That's why I'm giving you options at all, instead of just serving you papers tomorrow morning. He was silent for a long moment, contemplating the devastation of either choice. Finally, he asked, "How long do I have to decide?" "Until we leave this restaurant," I said, standing up and gathering my purse. "I'll be waiting in the car. Take your time, but know that your time is running out." As I walked away, leaving James alone at the table with the abandoned bracelet and the untouched anniversary cake, I felt lighter than I had in months. The path ahead would not be easy, regardless of which option James chose. But for the first time in a long time, I was the one in control of my future. The drive home was silent. James had chosen option 1, divorce with the prenup terms enforced. I wasn't surprised. The reconciliation conditions would have required him to fundamentally change who he was, and people rarely change that dramatically, especially when motivated by consequences rather than genuine desire. I slept in the guest bedroom that night. James tried to continue the conversation, alternating between apologizing, justifying his actions, and attempting to negotiate better terms. I remained firm, repeating that my conditions were non-negotiable. Eventually, he retreated to our bedroom, the door closing with a quiet finality that somehow seemed more significant than if he had slammed it. The next morning, I called my lawyer before James even woke up. Patricia Winters had been my attorney for years, initially handling contracts for my career before becoming a trusted advisor. When I had first shared my suspicions about James's infidelity, she had suggested the private investigator and helped me understand the legal implications of the evidence we might find. "It's time," I told her when she answered. "He chose divorce." "I'll start the paperwork immediately," Patricia replied. "Come to my office at noon. Bring the USB drive and any other evidence you have." After hanging up, I made coffee and sat at our kitchen island, looking around at the home we had built together. The modern art we had collected during trips to galleries in New York and Paris. The expensive appliances James had insisted on when we renovated 2 years ago. The family photos that now felt like artifacts from another life. By the time James came downstairs, dressed in yesterday's rumpled suit, I had packed an overnight bag. "Where are you going?" he asked, his voice rough from lack of sleep. "To my sister's," I replied. "I'm meeting with Patricia at noon to begin divorce proceedings. I suggest you find your own lawyer quickly." James poured himself coffee, his movements mechanical. "You're really going through with this?" It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Yes, I am. What about the company? The press will have a field day if this gets out." I placed my mug in the sink. "That's not my problem anymore. You should have considered the potential fallout before starting affairs with 3 different women." "It wasn't like that," he protested weakly. "I never meant for any of this to happen." "And yet it did," I replied. "Multiple times, with multiple women, over multiple months. Those aren't mistakes, James. They're choices." He had no response to that. As I moved toward the door, he called after me. "Rebecca, wait. What about our accounts? The house payments?" "Everything stays as is until the divorce is finalized," I explained. "The prenup is clear about maintaining the status quo during proceedings. You can stay here or find somewhere else to live. I don't care which." With that, I left, closing the door on 10 years of marriage and a future I had once believed in completely. My sister Catherine welcomed me with open arms and no questions, at least initially. After settling into her guest room, I finally broke down, the full weight of what had happened crashing over me. Catherine held me as I sobbed, years of suppressed emotions pouring out in a torrent of pain, anger, and grief. I suspected something was wrong, she admitted after I had calmed down enough to explain. "You haven't been yourself lately." "But I never imagined it was this bad." "Neither did I said, wiping my eyes. "Even when I hired the investigator, I was hoping he'd find nothing." Catherine's expression hardened. "I never liked James. Too charming, too perfect. Nobody's that perfect without hiding something. Despite my pain, I smiled weakly. You could have told me that 10 years ago. Would you have listened? Probably not, I admitted. I was too in love to see the red flags. The meeting with Patricia was productive, but exhausting. We reviewed the evidence, discussed strategy, and began the formal process of ending my marriage. By the time I returned to Catherine's that evening, I felt drained but resolute. Over the next few days, the news of our separation spread through our social circle. James attempted damage control, telling friends it was a temporary break due to work stress. My phone filled with concerned messages and calls, people choosing sides without fully understanding what had happened. I remained silent publicly, following Patricia's advice to let the legal process unfold without creating additional drama. Privately, however, I shared the truth with my closest friends and family. Their support became my lifeline as I navigated the turbulent waters of divorce. 1 week after the fateful anniversary dinner, Amanda contacted me. Her name appeared on my phone screen, surprising me enough that I almost didn't answer. Curiosity won out. "Rebecca," she began, her voice lacking the confidence she had displayed at the restaurant. "I owe you an apology. For sleeping with my husband or for showing up at our anniversary dinner?" I asked, not bothering to hide my bitterness. "Both," she replied simply. I didn't know the full extent of his deception. Not just to you, but to me as well. I sighed, sitting down on the edge of Catherine's sofa. "What do you want, Amanda?" "To help," she said. "I have texts, emails, photos. Things that might strengthen your case." My suspicion flared. "Why would you help me?" There was a pause before she answered. "Because I checked the serial number on the bracelet, like you suggested. It was one of 6 identical pieces ordered at the same time." 6, Rebecca. Not 3. There are more women we don't know about. The revelation shouldn't have hurt, given everything I already knew, but it did. 6 women, all receiving the same special gift from my husband. The scale of his betrayal continued to expand. "Send whatever you have to this email," I said, providing my personal address. "My lawyer will be in touch if we need anything else." After hanging up, I sat in silence, absorbing this new information. James's deception was even more extensive than I had imagined. Part of me wanted to confront him, to demand explanations for each new revelation. But another part, the stronger part, knew that no explanation would ever be sufficient. The days blurred together as the divorce proceedings advanced. James attempted several times to negotiate better terms, offering partial admissions in exchange for financial concessions. Patricia advised me to hold firm, and I did. The evidence was overwhelming, and with Amanda's additional documentation, James's position weakened further. 2 weeks after I left our home, I returned to collect more of my belongings. James was supposed to be at work, but his car was in the driveway when I arrived. I considered leaving but decided against it. This was still legally my house, and I refused to be chased away. I found him in his home office, surrounded by papers and looking disheveled. When he saw me, he quickly stood up. "Rebecca, I didn't know you were coming today." "I emailed you yesterday," I replied, keeping my distance. "I'm just here for more clothes and some personal items." He nodded, running a hand through his unkempt hair. "Take whatever you need." As I turned to leave, he called after me. "The board called an emergency meeting yesterday. About us. About the divorce." I paused but didn't turn around. "And they've asked me to take a leave of absence. Apparently, some of the shareholders are concerned about the potential scandal affecting stock prices." For a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy. James's identity was so wrapped up in his professional success that this must have been devastating for him. Then I remembered the 6 identical bracelets, the multiple women, the years of lies. "Actions have consequences," I said simply, and continued upstairs to pack my things. Later that week, I received an unexpected email from Stephanie, the London branch conquest. Unlike Amanda, She had known about James's marriage from the beginning. "He told me you had an arrangement," she wrote, "that you both had freedom to explore outside relationships as long as you were discreet." I believed him because I wanted to. The email contained additional evidence of their affair, including hotel receipts and photographs. Like Amanda, Stephanie seemed motivated by anger at being deceived, not just about me, but about being one of many women James was stringing along simultaneously. Jennifer from New York reached out next, having been contacted by Amanda. The three women had formed an unlikely alliance, comparing notes and discovering the full extent of James's manipulation. Each had been told they were special, unique, the only one who truly understood him. Each had received the same bracelet, the same promises, the same carefully constructed lies. Patricia was ecstatic about the mounting evidence. With all three mistresses willing to testify if necessary, James doesn't have a leg to stand on, she assured me. His lawyer is already making noise about settling. A month after our anniversary dinner, I received a settlement offer from James's attorney. He would accept the financial terms of the prenup in exchange for a non-disclosure agreement. He wanted to control the narrative about our divorce to protect what remained of his reputation. "What do you think?" I asked Patricia after reviewing the offer. "Financially, it gives you everything you're entitled to," she said. The NDA would prevent you from discussing specific details of his infidelity publicly, but you could still acknowledge that the marriage ended due to his unfaithfulness. I considered my options carefully. Part of me wanted the world to know exactly what James had done, how thoroughly he had betrayed not just me but multiple women. Another part just wanted this chapter of my life to end so I could begin healing. "Let's counter," I decided. "I'll accept the NDA if he makes a substantial donation to a women's shelter in the city. And I want a formal apology, in writing, that I can share with our closest friends and family." James accepted my counteroffer within hours. The divorce proceedings, which could have dragged on for months or even years, were resolved in record time. The marriage that had taken a decade to build was dismantled in just 6 weeks. On the day the divorce was finalized, I sat alone in a coffee shop, staring at the document that officially ended my status as Mrs. James Harrington. I felt a complex mixture of emotions: relief, sadness, anger, and, beneath it all, a tentative sense of freedom. The future stretched before me, uncharted and uncertain, but mine to shape as I chose. My phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. "It's done." "It's done," I replied. "Coming over with wine and pizza. We're celebrating your Independence Day." I smiled at her message, grateful for the support system that had carried me through this ordeal. My sister, my friends, even the unlikely trio of James's mistresses who had become unexpected allies in my fight for justice. I hadn't been alone, even in my darkest moments. As I left the coffee shop, I realized I was no longer wearing my wedding ring. I had removed it weeks ago but had continued to feel its phantom presence on my finger. Today, for the first time, I didn't feel that ghost of pressure. I was truly beginning to move forward. 6 months after the anniversary dinner that changed everything, I stood in the living room of my new apartment, admiring how the morning light streamed through the large windows. Unlike the sleek, modern aesthetic of the home I had shared with James, this space was warm and inviting, filled with comfortable furniture and personal touches that were entirely my own. The divorce settlement had left me financially secure. The house had been sold, with my portion of the proceeds allowing me to purchase this beautiful apartment in a quieter neighborhood. I had taken a sabbatical from work to focus on healing, a luxury afforded by the substantial settlement and penalty payment from the prenup. My phone chimed with a text message from my therapist, confirming our session later that afternoon. Weekly therapy had become an essential part of my recovery process. Dr. Melissa had helped me work through the anger, betrayal, and self-doubt that had initially threatened to consume me after the divorce. "You didn't fail at marriage," she had told me during one particularly difficult session. "Your husband failed you. There's a difference." Those words had become a mantra of sorts, helping me separate my self-worth from the collapse of my relationship. I hadn't been blind or foolish or inadequate. I had been betrayed by someone I trusted completely. The failure was his, not mine. As I prepared for my day, I thought about how much had changed in these 6 months. Initially, I had barely been able to get out of bed, overwhelmed by grief for the life I thought I had and the future I had planned. Now, I was building something new, something entirely my own. I had lunch plans with a friend from my yoga class, one of several new relationships I had formed since the divorce. Stepping outside the insular world of couple friends I had inhabited with James had been refreshing. These new friends knew me only as Rebecca, not as one half of James and Rebecca, and there was freedom in that distinction. As I walked to the cafe where we had agreed to meet, I passed a familiar jewelry store. In the window display, diamond tennis bracelets glittered under the spotlight. I paused, surprised by my lack of emotional response. Once, the sight would have triggered a flood of painful memories. Now, they were just objects, neither threatening nor alluring. Rebecca? I turned at the sound of my name, startled to find Amanda standing behind me. She looked different from the confident woman who had approached our anniversary table 6 months ago. Her hair was shorter, her makeup more subtle, her demeanor less calculated. Amanda, I acknowledged, unsure how to feel about this unexpected encounter. We had communicated via email during the divorce proceedings, but I hadn't seen her in person since that night. I thought it was you, she said, shifting awkwardly. You look well. Thank you, I replied. So do you. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. We were two women connected by an experience neither of us had chosen, standing on a sidewalk with diamond bracelets glittering ironically in the window beside us. Would you like to get coffee? Amanda asked suddenly. I've been wanting to talk to you properly, not just through lawyers and emails. My instinct was to decline, to protect myself from reopening wounds that were finally beginning to heal. But curiosity won out. There's a place around the corner, I suggested. 10 minutes later, we sat across from each other, steaming mugs between us. Amanda traced the rim of her cup with one finger, gathering her thoughts. I owe you an apology, she finally said. A real one, face to face. What I did was inexcusable. I knew you existed, and I chose to pursue a relationship with James anyway. I took a sip of my coffee, considering her words. Why did you come to our anniversary dinner? Was that his idea or yours? She looked genuinely ashamed. Mine. He had told me he was going to ask for a divorce that night. I wanted to. I don't know, stake my claim? Show you that he had chosen me? It sounds so petty and cruel now. It was cruel, I agreed. But I'm actually grateful you did it. Amanda looked up, surprised. Grateful. If you hadn't shown up wearing that bracelet, I might have accepted whatever excuse James offered for his behavior. I might have tried to save a marriage that wasn't worth saving. Your appearance forced me to confront the truth I had been avoiding. She nodded slowly. I never imagined there were others. When you mentioned Jennifer and Stephanie at the restaurant, I thought you were bluffing. I wish I had been, I admitted. Finding out about the 6 bracelets was... 6? Amanda interrupted, her eyes widening. I only knew about the 3 of us. I hadn't meant to reveal this detail, but there was no taking it back now. The jeweler confirmed he ordered 6 identical pieces. We only identified 3 of you. Amanda sat back in her chair, absorbing this information. He really was a monster, wasn't he? I don't know if monster is the right word, I said after a moment's reflection. He's deeply flawed, selfish, and dishonest. But calling him a monster lets him off the hook somehow, makes his behavior seem inhuman rather than a series of deliberate choices. That's a remarkably compassionate perspective, Amanda said. I shrugged. Therapy helps. And time. We talked for nearly an hour, filling in gaps in each other's understanding of what had happened. Amanda had met James 8 months before our anniversary. He had pursued her aggressively, making her feel special and valued. When she discovered he was married, he had fed her the classic lines about an unhappy marriage, separate lives, staying together for appearances. "I should have known better," she said. "The red flags were there. I just chose to ignore them." "We both did," I acknowledged. As we prepared to leave, Amanda hesitated. "Do you know what happened to him? After everything?" I nodded. He lost his position at the company. The board cited moral turpitude clauses in his contract. Last I heard, he had moved to Seattle to work for a smaller firm. "Starting over, I suppose." "And you?" she asked. "Are you starting over too?" "In a way," I replied. "But it's more like continuing on a different path. I'm still me, just without the weight of a failing marriage pulling me down." We parted with an awkward but genuine handshake, unlikely acquaintances with a shared history neither of us had anticipated. As I walked away, I realized the encounter hadn't upset me as I might have expected. It had simply been another step in the healing process, another piece of the past to acknowledge and release. That evening, I sat on my balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. I thought about the diamond bracelet that had been at the center of our drama. After the divorce was finalized, I had sold it and donated the proceeds to a women's shelter that specialized in helping those rebuilding their lives after leaving abusive relationships. It felt right to transform something that had represented pain into a force for positive change. My therapist had suggested I write letters to James, not to send, but to express the thoughts and feelings I needed to process. The most recent one sat in my journal, the final paragraph summarizing my journey. I used to think love meant sacrifice, compromise, and sometimes silence. I believed that being a good wife meant accepting less than I deserved. The night of our anniversary, when I saw another woman wearing the bracelet meant for me, something broke inside me, but something stronger was forged in that breaking. I learned that true strength isn't enduring pain silently. It's acknowledging when something is wrong and having the courage to change it. The diamond bracelet you gave her was meant to be a symbol of our decade together. Instead, it became the key that unlocked my freedom. Dating again had been a tentative process. I had coffee with a colleague from another department, dinner with a man my sister knew from her running club. Nothing serious yet, but I was open to the possibility of connection again. More importantly, I was no longer afraid of being alone. The silence of my apartment wasn't lonely, it was peaceful. I had started my own marketing consultancy, leveraging my years of experience and industry connections. The flexibility allowed me to take on projects that truly interested me while maintaining space for personal growth and healing. My first major client had been a women's professional network, helping them rebrand and expand their reach, work that felt meaningful beyond the paycheck. As darkness fell and the city lights began to twinkle, I reflected on the lessons of the past year. I had learned that love without respect is worthless. That my worth wasn't determined by someone else's ability to remain faithful. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from something that no longer serves you, even when staying would be easier. I had also learned about my own resilience. The woman who had sat across from Amanda and James at that anniversary dinner, calmly pulling out a USB drive while her world collapsed around her, was stronger than I had ever known I could be. That strength hadn't come from nowhere. It had always been within me, waiting for the moment when I would need it most. The bracelet that should have been mine had instead become a catalyst for transformation. Its diamonds hadn't adorned my wrist, but they had illuminated a path forward that I might otherwise never have found. As I closed my journal and prepared for bed, I felt a sense of peace that had been absent for much of my marriage. The future was unwritten, full of possibilities I was now free to explore. The pain hadn't disappeared completely. There were still moments when grief or anger would surface unexpectedly, but it no longer defined me. I was Rebecca, 35 years old, building a life on my own terms. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Have you ever faced a moment when someone's betrayal forced you to find strength you didn't know you had? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes the hardest challenges lead to the most powerful transformations. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and self-discovery. Thank you for listening, and remember, your worth is never determined by someone else's inability to see it. Stay strong, and I'll see you in the next video.